welcome back to Sea and Free Studio. This is Jennifer Langian. I'm so glad to have you here today. You know, most of the guests I've had on the show have been friends of mine, and this young woman that I just met literally 5 minutes ago, I hope to be good friends with after this. Ciruolo is head of inclusion at Jambb, which is a blockchain technology company. She is Boston-based, and she's a DEIB leader. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. That means she teaches companies how to build inclusive cultures and workspaces where employees can bring their whole selves to work. She's recently authored and published her book, Ally Up, and it focuses on skills critical to being an ally, accomplice, or abolitionist at work. She's a mom of two. I'm super excited to have her here today and tell us a little bit more about her background. Welcome, Di.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes,
yep, still here.
Yay. You. I'm so glad to meet you. Yes. Well,
I'm so happy to be here.
Tell everybody where you are and kind of what you're doing these days.
So I am in Cambridge, which is right outside Boston proper. We are in the middle of Flow Fest at Jambb, so we have decided, because we are going so fast, that we needed to have an offsite. So we had to drive into Cambridge, and I'm sitting here like perched on a chair here, trying to chat with everybody about what I do for work. So yeah, that's where I am, and that's what I'm doing.
So tell everyone, what is blockchain technology, if there's viewers that aren't hip enough to know? What exactly is it that Jambb does?
So what we're doing right now is we are working with comedians and other entertainers and people in media to release NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens. So we are working with them to release moments of their comedy specials that people are looking to own and buy and trade. And it's becoming a collectibles market for events and awesome things that people want to own that they weren't able to be there for. So we're in a really interesting place, getting to do really interesting things, getting to meet really fun people. So I would say the easiest way to explain what we do is that, how do you easily explain blockchain? I guess you explain it as sort of cryptocurrency. I guess is the easiest and shortest way to explain. Cryptocurrency is built on blockchain. So that's what I would say.
Well, I know a lot of people that play in this space, and it's a bit foreign to me. So I'm always curious exactly what is it that you're transacting with. Yeah,
it's a complicated sandbox, but I think that the market here has never been more interesting or more fun. And I'm here mostly because I think that this space, particularly tech, particularly blockchain and crypto, have a lot that they can be doing universally to drive up inclusion in our space. So that's what I do here. I don't even do the actual like math. I do the people ops. So I'm not even a good answerer to the question of what is cryptocurrency, Di. Like, well, it's a great question. Yeah.
So Di, so I know you're in the space of diversity and inclusion, and that this is a real passion, but also you're very experienced in this field. Tell everyone just a little bit about what you do, and then I want to get to what makes you unique, special, and different.
Yes. So what I do in particular is I work on inclusion at all levels of the employee life cycle. So for Jambb and technology companies in general, that tends to look like how we hire, who's not getting to our jobs, who's not getting to our pools of candidates, who's not getting hired. How do we think about that? How do we make sure to include those people? How do we measure that? Next up, onboarding through the employee life cycle. Next, after that, we need to think about inclusive culture. How do we think about culture? The answer is intentionally. We think about culture intentionally. It doesn't just build by itself. So, and then, we work on leadership and how we think about mentorship versus sponsorship. And those are all the sorts of things that we think about throughout the DEI or the DEIB field, and what sort of facilitators like myself do here, is know the science and know people and know how to work with people well to make these things successful, to make these initiatives successful. Because unfortunately, you can't just do whatever and hope for the best, as many companies have found out over the course of the last 18 months, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the relevancy of what you do certainly has gotten a lot of attention especially in the last 18 months and here in the US. But it's a growing field. I've been very familiar with it in my career, being in the people space as well for a long time. And it's nice to finally see some dialogue happening in this space. So I'm glad you're a big part of that and trying to drive change.
Absolutely.
On that note, what makes you unique, special, and different and drives you? It has to do with people. But for you, what is that thing, that spark inside you that guides everything you do?
I would say that my experience in foster care sort of sparked my uniqueness, sort of sparked my inability to fit into boxes that I was seeing around me. I will say that when you grow up in foster care, you have kind of a outsider's view on society and culture and all of those things kind of as a whole, because you have a tendency to bump into those boundaries. You sort of have people who tell you one thing about, what those boundaries are in society, and it's a very different situation when you start living that life, right? Especially if you don't live in the same skin as somebody else. So I was noticing those boundaries from the outside, and then as a Latin person, as a queer person, as a mother, all of those things intersected for me in a way that was different for other people. So that inspired me to be understanding what these systems were, these systems of power that were keeping me out and people like me out. And these narratives of, oh, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or, oh, you just need to graduate college, or any of those things, were all fake narratives. Because once I graduated from college and became one of the 3% of foster kids that are able to do that, I still had trouble finding a job. So, I mean, there were barriers to entry all over the place that people were just unwilling to, or maybe didn't know to acknowledge. And that's kind of how I got my start, is just being on the outside and not fitting in any boxes. I tried to fit in for a long time. And then when I got to my mid-20s, I was like, all right, who's this for? So
That's great. So you took that, what could have been, early adversity in your life, and not fitting in, and you made it a strength. And, not, like, to your point, not everybody's able to do that, to make that transition and to see that thing that perhaps frustrated you, that you potentially could have held you back if you'd let it, actually become something that fuels you now. Was there, so you said in your 20s, you had this moment where you just accepted that. What happened in that moment? Can you describe it for us?
yes. So I will say that I was probably leading up to this moment over and over, when people would tell me, oh, you just have to do this one more thing to be successful, or you just have to do this one more thing to be the same as us. And then when I would defy the odds for people like me and do that one more thing, that wasn't really the one more thing. So it got me to the place where I realized that anybody that would continue to put barriers to entry up for someone like me, they don't care how much more work I do to get there. It's not me that's the problem, right? Like, that's what occurred to me in my 20s, was just like, oh dang, this isn't about me at all. This isn't about me. These aren't my boxes. These aren't my goals. It isn't my goal to be more like, someone else. It's my goal to be more like myself, and find the thing that only I can be, So, I mean, I would say that that's what happened in my 20s, is I just kind of, I couldn't I couldn't try any harder to be something I wasn't. And I mean, look at me. People can like, people can tell pretty right off the bat whether who I am. So I just can't be any smaller, I guess.
Yeah. And you shouldn't be. Like, I love that.
No,
And
yes, absolutely. Now in my
right.
30s, people are like, "Oh, you're so authentic," and it's like, "Yes, yes, thank you. It's the trauma." Like, "Thank
That's
you.
right.
I'm
Fought
so
hard for
funny
that.
and
Thanks.
charming and clever." Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, it's so that's it is hard to stand in your own, and you're the head of inclusion, right? You're focusing on that. So
Yes.
how are you helping other people get comfortable with perhaps either not fitting in, to your point, or opening doors, giving them spaces to fit in, to feel a sense of belonging? How is that informing your work today?
So I would say I am the type of person that needs to take up a lot of space. I have ADHD. This is what my hair looks like. These are my real eyebrows. Like, I have to take up a lot of space to be myself. And what I'm finding is that people can live under that umbrella pretty safely. Um, and take up less space than me. And that's been like, people have been really successful at, well, at least we don't need as much room as Di, so that's been going pretty well. And it's been making a lot of space for people that I didn't realize I was making space for over my life, right? Like over my life, just being myself, people kind of vibed with me and they were attracted to what I was doing. And then they were able to sort of stand under my umbrella of safety and space, right? So that's what I kind of have continued in my work. And I'm finding that more and more people just feel so included by that, so like they can belong, like they can take up their own space, like whatever their space that they need to take up is, whatever their identities are. So I've just been so lucky and so grateful
Yeah,
to do this
that's
work.
great. Well, if it makes you feel better, my hair is actually very naturally curly as well. So it is,
I've
it is,
tried
I got
straightening
big
it. Oh
Texas
my
hair.
God. Like, oh my God. Like, I've been trying to straighten it for so many years now. And when I run into other Spanish people, other Hispanic people, or Latin people, they'll be like, "Oh, did you hear about this dryer?" And it's like the kind that, like, that's like, a round brush. And like, we're telling each other about it now out in the world in our 30s. Like, "Oh, did you hear about this dryer that straightens your hair?" And of course, now that I'm in my 30s, I'm just like, who's that for? I'm not straightening my hair. This is how it grows out of my head. This is how it looks,
Right.
Now that I finally have the tools I need, now I don't care anymore.
That's right.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Well, I love that. I love that. And I mean, it's powerful to be authentic in your
Yes.
leadership, and like you
Yes.
said, to find that space and own that space. For you going now into the business world and trying to
Right.
influence the business world in that way, what are the things that you're noticing?
In business. So, the
Yes.
thing that we're noticing in business the most is probably the fact that the sort of majority narrative thinks that everybody else has the ability to show up the way they show up. So, what we're finding is that people will think about other people and not notice the gap between where they are and how much work it is to show up as like a straight white man at work. Like how much effort that there's no way to fill that gap. So that's what we're noticing the most. All of this time, leaders have thought that the goal was to get people to assimilate to their overall culture without knowing that that's not how diversity and inclusion works, because most people can't do that. So, I mean, what can I do differently to look more like, I belong? Not everybody can assimilate in that way. And that's probably the biggest thing that I'm finding, is just the fact that the level zero knowledge that doesn't exist on leadership teams in terms of diversity, inclusion, and belonging. We need more upskills in terms of what managers know, and what leaders know. I know a lot of times when I talk to a leader, they'll be like, "Oh, the culture just flows down from leadership," and it's like, it doesn't just flow down. It has to be really intentional, and if it's just flowing down, unfortunately, that's usually unintentional, and you don't want what you end up with. So a lot of things, I guess, are what's happening out here in DEI and tech.
Yeah. Well, and do you think, I mean, Di, like, I mean, everything that's been happening and all the awareness in this space, especially in the last couple of years, do you feel like we're all going to keep trying to get into the same box and trying to fit in there, or are you seeing some movement where you're seeing the loosening up, at least just the awareness, to your point, like if we're starting with a baseline of pretty much nil, are you
Yes,
starting to see some
absolutely.
moments of clarity? Yeah. What
Absolutely.
are those like?
So everybody's in a different phase of learning. And when people are at like level 0, or they are unaware of racism as it exists, or they're unaware of patriarchal systems or any of those things, I consider that like level 0. And that's completely fine because it's a good place to start. Also, you got your level 1 learners who are just like, they're at a different place. Maybe they've noticed that racism exists, but they're not really sure that anything can be done about it. And then, you get your next level learners who are actively aware of racism and patriarchy and all of those things, and they are self-educating around what they don't know. There are kind of a lot of different places for you to be in as a learner, but I wanted to start with level 0 with my book and just take people from like, this is the difference between discrimination, and this is why racism is garbage. This is the difference between Latinx and Hispanic. Like I really just wanted to take everybody from where they were to where I felt like they needed to be in their workplaces, having these conversations to unmake these systems that oppress their workers, and then their coworkers. So lots of different things, lots of moving pieces. And I would say that I'm seeing a lot of people kind of come to the conclusion that they need to educate themselves. So
Yeah.
hopefully that continues. And I do think that we can get there. I think that we can get there, and I think that we can do better. I think that people are aware of the fact that we're not trying to fit everybody in boxes anymore. But unfortunately, I think sometimes managers are, especially when they've got like these diversity statistics that they need to fill or anything like that. Then sometimes you see people getting involved for the wrong reasons. And that's the kind of thing that does real harm. So yes, you
Yeah.
want to make sure you know what you're doing, but you also want to make sure you know why we're doing it. The why is really the most crucial part. The most crucial part, I would say.
Yeah. And you're right. Like I say that all the time. I have grad students, I talk about, they're making sure they're clear on their own why, but the why of the
Yes,
business they want to create. And,
absolutely.
how do you help people find that why? I mean, is there a couple of tips or tricks or first
Oh, of
steps you
course.
recommend?
Yes, everybody comes to this space from an authentic place, right? So there are lots of people who come to this DEI work from an authentic place. Like maybe you're a mom, maybe you are part of the LGBTQ plus community, maybe you are part of another marginalized identity, historically marginalized. I work with people who are veterans, and they came to DEI from the veteran perspective. Or I work with people who are First Nations, and they come to DEI from the First Nations impacted perspective. Like there are a million ways to come to this work and have your why be strong enough to carry you through what you're going to have to deal with. Unfortunately, what there is not are any allyship cookies or any stuff that's going to feed you and keep you going if you're here for the wrong reason. So if you don't come here for the right reason and you don't come to this work for the right reasons, you will not have the why that sustains you to keep going when you keep getting kicked, because that's what DEIB does. Like if you're here to like be noticed and get waved at and get attaboys and cookies, this is not the work for you because this is not what this work is about at all. It's about you have to be strong in why you're here, and what you're trying to change and what impact you're trying to make in order for any of this to have any meaning or any value. Otherwise, it's just performative allyship and you'll burn out quickly. So,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It is
as you
a
know,
space. Oh, I do know. Yeah, I totally know. I mean, I think I early in my career was in multicultural affairs and in the university setting. And I think I went into it very naively with this assumption everybody was altruistic. We're all
of
here
course,
to make things better.
yes.
I learned
We're
very
all here
quickly
for the
that was
right
not the
reasons.
case.
We all want to unmake systemic oppression. Of course, we all see this the same way. No, that's level
No,
0 allyship, y'all.
that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, because you
Yeah.
started to realize people were there for their own,
Mm-hmm.
typically their benefit or getting a larger piece
Yes.
of the proverbial pie, and
Yes.
yeah, that can get
Performative
you can get quite
allyship.
disillusioned.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Yeah,
Well, I
absolutely.
love it.
I agree.
I love that you're bringing attention to that because, I think that's it. And it's hard and it's humbling to kind of wake up and go, okay, I'm not quite where I want to be, right? But I think that the fact that you're suggesting there are levels of which you can
There
evolve your
are,
thinking and
of
awareness
course.
and understanding. That's wonderful.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm only doing medium myself because how can I be doing, I've got two kids. My kids are 6 and 4. I mean, I am doing the most mediumest medium ever. Like I'm doing the best I can, but there are levels above me, certainly. So just to be clear.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I do have one question, and maybe, taking this just one step further, Di, how do you
Please.
help people understand that talking about their identity or how they identify and how their affinity towards whatever
Mhm.
group they identify with is not conflated with their politics. I think this is a big discussion I see in businesses trying to figure out, do I let people talk about who they are because I don't want politics distracting people in the workplace. And I think to myself, I'm like, well, why do we keep conflating people talking about who they are with politics and taking a political stand?
Why
And
indeed?
so it's very interesting to say it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, I try to not do that because I'm trying to show, look, I mean, politics getting wrapped up in identity is on purpose and it's to keep the fight going, right? And of course. But for me, it's more important that people understand, by people, I mean managers, understand that you can't just say, oh, well, we're not going to talk about social justice at work because we've seen that in tech, right? We saw companies say things like, oh, we're going to try to do this DEI stuff ourselves. We're not going to spend any money on it, and we're going to make sure that our impacted groups are the people who are carrying this for us. And then when that doesn't work out, because it never works out, we throw our hands up in the air as leaders and we say, oh, we're not racist, that just doesn't work. And it's like, does inclusion not work, or just does doing it completely in a way that makes sure that everybody knows that it's not a priority to you not work? Like that's the thing that doesn't work, right? So and we've seen that happen. I can think of some companies who have tried to pull that recently and get away with it. And what we end up with is mass exoduses of specifically BIPOC talent in a time where we can't afford to be losing anybody. So I just, when companies want to say, oh, we're trying to be neutral because we don't want to, we don't want to invite politics into the workplace. And it's like, well, what exactly are you thinking of as political? Are you thinking of people's identities as political? Are you thinking of these issues as political? Are you thinking of people who have children as a political issue? Because, we're people. If you don't have people who can manage people ops, then of course that's going to continue to fall down and burn. Like, stop making people fight you to be who they are. Stop making people need to prove to you who they are. Stop trying to put people in your boxes. Stop trying to get people to hide. Stop trying to get people to assimilate, conform, all the stuff that doesn't work. And I mean, when I say it out loud, it seems like it's pretty obvious, but it's not that obvious when you get to people's workspaces. I'll just be perfectly honest, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And I love that. I think it's great that you're calling out, like, it's exactly your USD. Don't
Yeah.
try to make people get in your box, fit in your
That's
box.
absolutely right. Don't try to
Right.
make people smaller to fit in boxes that you can comprehend, because all you have done is try to strip away the things that make them unique and turn them into something you can manage. And it's like, sir, like that's not what you want. That's not even what we say we want. Those aren't the outcomes we want. We know better. Like it's silly to me as leaders. We've been doing this for too long to not know better. So
That's right. That's right. Well, I love your call to action, and I feel like you and I could talk
thank
for
you.
hours. And I'm
I
like,
mean,
I know.
call me any other day.
Okay, I will. I will take you up on that. Well, there's a part in every show where I like to ask a random question, Di. So you get to pick between
Please.
1 and 25, and that will be your
Mhm.
question. So, what question would you like? 1 through 25.
16.
All right. If you could wipe out one fear that people have, what would it be? And how would we be better for it?
If I could wipe out one fear, I think it would be, oh, see, I want to say the fear that I would wipe out would be worrying about what other people think. I think a lot of us work really hard to be seen a certain way, forgetting the fact that a different version of ourselves exists for everybody who knows us. So I think that that would be something. But on the other hand, I do sort of, I guess the answer to that question would have been at the time, years ago, I sort of enjoy the fact that society keeps certain things from happening because people would shame you. But it seems like lately that doesn't exist anymore. So I don't know, I'm medium. I would say that I would want to remove for people, especially women, especially BIPOC women, and especially queer people, that fear about how to be more like the majority narrative. Let's say that that's what I would like to get rid of for people, because that's what we really need out there is people who have to show up as themselves.
Yes, wonderful. Well,
Like me, come out here with me.
exactly for you. And you talked about how you got to that place. You started as a foster kid, and one of the things
I
I like
did.
to do here is really raise awareness for different organizations, and you are doing just that for other foster kids out there with Together
Yes.
We Rise. Would you tell us a little bit about the nonprofit that you're supporting
Yes.
and how it's
So
involved?
when I got started supporting Together We Rise years ago, it was about the fact that little kids in foster care basically go from house to house with all of their worldly goods in some sort of disposable garbage bag. And Together We Rise started with duffel bags for kids to carry their stuff in. And over the course of time, have continued to add, more things that you can buy that can go to, little kids that just need to feel like they matter. The thing about foster care for me that was so unsettling was just how adults seemed to be very easy to convince that we foster children had some role in our in the situation that we found ourselves in. There was a lot of victim blaming around that, and I feel like the Together We Rise organization just has done so much for me over even just the last 5 or 10 years, just making me feel like I'm doing it. I'm working on it. There are more people like me that came up through foster care and are kind of are making their way too. That's why I support Together We Rise, because I'm so grateful. You know.
Yeah. Well, I want everyone to support Together We Rise, help young foster kids navigate a pretty tough circumstance in their life and emerge from it even more
Absolutely.
resilient and better. So please take time, if you're watching this on YouTube, go and click on the QR code you see on the screen. It's super easy. It takes you right to the donation page so you can donate. You can obviously call them up and get involved and volunteer. They would probably appreciate that. But Di, thanks for bringing attention together to Together We Rise, so that all of us know a little bit more about it. So
Absolutely. I
tell
really
me,
appreciate the opportunity.
absolutely. Well, thank you. And, I've just really enjoyed getting to know you. I will take you up on the, I'll call you sometime and we'll chat. But what's next for you? What's happened in your life? Any big milestones coming up that you'd like to tell us about?
Oh my goodness, what's happening for me? So Jamb is doing fantastic. Like I said, we just did we're doing this amazing Flow Fest event that we're currently working on. We just worked with Hannibal Burris. We have tons of great stuff coming down the pipe. So many people wanting to get involved with us, so many amazing things, so much intentional community that we're creating in blockchain. I'm just a lot of things, a lot of things. And my future dream, like 5 years down the road, maybe, is to go work for maybe Vernee Myers at Netflix, because she's amazing. And that's just my goal. Like, I'll go work for her wherever she goes, but like, it's a goal for sure.
Well, great. Well, now that you've put that out into the universe,
Now it's in
Vernee,
the universe.
that's right. Vernee, in 5 years, you call up Di. She is ready to go
Yes. Oh
after
my
she
gosh.
makes a big impact here. Well, please go out and
Yes.
buy Di's book. I think it sounds like a wonderful opportunity to get educated, to build awareness, to self-reflect on what
Absolutely.
boxes perhaps you're putting people in or putting yourself in. So, Di, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so glad to have you on CN Free Studio. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, everyone, that's going to be a wrap for today's episode. Please subscribe to seeandfreestudio.com. You can find us on any podcast channel you like. Really love to see everybody come back every week. And that's a wrap.